In a remote village deep within the heart of Africa, there lived a man named Kwame. Known for his kind heart and easy laughter, Kwame was loved by many. But life, as unpredictable as it could be, had other plans for him. One day, while working near the river, he met with a tragic accident and drowned. His body was found days later, and the village mourned him deeply. They gave him a proper burial, and though the years moved on, the villagers never forgot Kwame. But that was only the beginning of the story. Years after Kwame's death, his spirit began to wander. Driven by an unfulfilled yearning, it roamed far away from his village to a bustling town miles away. There, it found a woman named Ada. She was beautiful, spirited, and kind, a woman who could make even a lost soul feel at home. When Kwame, now appearing as a charming and quiet stranger, met her, he fell in love. To Ada, he was simply a man from another town, a little mysterious but good and hardworking. Before long they were married, and in time they had children together. However, one thing stood out. Whenever Ada asked Kwame to take her to his village to meet his family, he always had a reason to refuse. "The roads are terrible," he'd say. "It's far, my love. We don't need to go." "Maybe next year," he'd promise, brushing it off with a smile. Ada noticed how quickly he changed the subject whenever she brought it up. Over the years, the excuses grew thinner, and her curiosity became harder to suppress. One day, after persistent pleading, Ada finally got her way. "Today we go to your village, Kwame. No more excuses." Kwame's face grew pale, but seeing the determination in Ada's eyes, he agreed. "All right," he said softly. "Let's go." The journey was long and winding. They rode on a motorcycle, Ada holding onto Kwame tightly as the dusty road stretched before them. But as they approached a lonely junction, a place where the path split towards a cluster of villages, Kwame tapped the rider's shoulder and motioned to stop. "We'll get down here," he said. Confused, Ada looked around. "Here? Why?" Kwame stepped off the motorcycle. "The village is just a stone's throw away," he said, forcing a smile. "I'll quickly buy something from that little kiosk down there. You go ahead. Follow this path straight, and you'll see my family's house. It's easy to find." Ada hesitated. Something felt strange. "Why don't we go together?" she asked. "I'll catch up. I promise." Reluctantly, Ada agreed and climbed back onto the motorcycle. She watched Kwame wave as the bike rattled away, his figure shrinking in the distance. When Ada reached the house Kwame had described, she was greeted by a group of villagers sitting under the shade of a large baobab tree. Children played nearby, and chickens scratched at the dry earth. She walked up nervously. "Good afternoon," she greeted. "I'm looking for Kwame's family. I'm his wife." The villagers stared at her with puzzled faces. "Kwame," one of the older men finally said, narrowing his eyes. "Which Kwame?" "Kwame, your brother," Ada replied, smiling as she dug into her bag. "He described this place. He said this was his home." The villagers exchanged glances, their confusion deepening. One of the women stepped forward. "Our brother Kwame died 10 years ago, my dear," she said carefully. Ada froze. No, she stammered. "That's not possible. Kwame is alive. I live with him. We have children together." "Do you have a picture?" the old man asked, his voice sharp. Ada's hands shook as she pulled a photograph from her bag. A picture of her, Kwame, and their children, smiling on a sunny day. She handed it over. When the villagers saw the photo, gasps escaped their lips. The old man's face went pale, and a woman covered her mouth in shock. This is Kwame," the old man whispered, his voice trembling. "But it cannot be. Kwame has been dead for 10 years. Ada staggered back, her mind spinning. No, she cried. "This is impossible." The villagers explained how Kwame had died, how they had buried him under the large mango tree behind the house. But Ada could not accept it. Tears streamed down her face as the realization struck her. The man she had loved, the father of her children, had been a spirit all along. As the villagers took her to Kwame's grave, a chill settled over Ada. She stared at the earth, marked only by a simple wooden cross, and suddenly understood why Kwame never wanted to return. He knew his people would recognize him. He knew the truth would unravel. Back at the junction where Kwame had left her, no one ever saw him again. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. Ada returned home, haunted yet comforted by the love they had shared and the children they had created. To this day, some say that spirits wander among us, drawn to the living by unfinished business or longing. And sometimes love, powerful and enduring, can tether them to a life that isn't theirs to claim. And if you ever find yourself at that lonely junction, listen closely to the wind. You might hear the faint echo of a man's footsteps, and the quiet sigh of a soul that dared to love beyond the grave.